Afternoon, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. As you can see, I have a pile of gear in front of me on a table and some more beside me here, a little bit more over there. I have a ton of gear sitting here, and all of it ranges in dates from 1890 to 1939-ish. So a 50-year time span. And when you're doing living history, which I'm getting ready to do a living history squirrel camp in that time frame of era with some guys, Sean Dyer, Sarge Viking, Nathan Lodgen, James Bender, are all guys that are coming here for that period specific squirrel hunt to do a living history event here at the school. So I'm gathering my things together and deciding what I want to use in this event, because honestly, I have a lot of stuff that falls into that time period. I also have bought things as of late that fall into that time period. I'm a big fan of James Bender's videos on his hobo series, which falls right into that Depression era time frame. And what I want to do is I want to set myself up as a hunter-trapper of the Depression era. Now, when you say Depression era, you're talking about those mid-1930s time frame. However, just like today, we use lots of things that are from the 80s, 90s, 70s today that are 50 years old. So if you were living in 1935, 1936 time frame, and you were using something that was made during the early 1900s or even the late 1800s, it would be perfectly fine, because those things would have been available and people would have had them passed down as heirlooms and things like that, that they would have kept on using 50 years later beyond a shadow of a doubt. I use lots of things now, even today, that are way older than 50 years old. And I'm getting ready to use some gear now that's much older than that in many cases. So what I wanted to do was, going into this, I wanted to kind of start a series this year. And again, I've taken a lot of inspiration from James Bender. I think he does a really good job of research, presentation, and photography and filming with his hobo series. And so I wanted to do kind of a series, possibly kind of bounce off of that, of what I think a Depression era hunter or trapper may have carried. And there's a couple of reasons that I've chosen that hunter-trapper persona, per se, for that period. One of them, obviously, is because I'm already a hunter-trapper, so it kind of falls in with things that I would have already bought or collected that go along with that type of activity. I have lots and lots of traps that fit into that period very easily, because I have lots and lots of old traps. But one of the things that I wanted to discuss with you guys is, we talk about Depression era and people struggling, people not having much money. And with the hobo series that James Bender's doing, obviously those hobos were traveling from work camp to work camp, or traveling to rails. They didn't have a lot of money. They were trading things that they might make, or trading services, sweeping out a kitchen or something, sweeping out a warehouse possibly, or stacking firewood even for the next meal. But in reality, someone who understood trapping and was a good trapper in that time frame could make a very good living, because the fur trade was huge during that period. And you look back, or look forward, I guess, to the fur trade today, and everybody talks about, bobcats and coyotes and wolf and all of that stuff being worth so much money. And so that was all upland trapping and hunting. And the guys in the 1930s were on the water's edge. And that's my favorite place to be. Mink was worth the big money. Raccoon was worth good money. Even possum was worth decent money in high numbers. House cats were a thing, believe it or not. I'm going to put a price list on this video to show you a St. Louis fur company in 1935, what they were paying for different things. And house cats were worth money. But mink was where the big money was at, truly, for the trapper of the Depression era, because one good buck mink could bring as much as 2 weeks factory wages for a normal person who was making 25 cents an hour in that time period. A large buck mink could get you 2 weeks wages with one animal. So someone who had 100, 150 traps out on a line and spent his days and evenings catching and processing and resetting traps and game and things like that could make a very, very good living. And if he hunted off the landscape at the same time while he was checking trap lines, like I often do, he could probably easily supplement his income by selling food to other people, because raccoon, possum were definitely on the menu in the Depression era. If you don't believe that, just do a little bit of research. We cringe at those things now about eating possums and raccoons, but those things were eaten readily, especially in the South during the Depression. So that's kind of what I'm working towards. So I wanted to kind of walk through, hey, Zon, this cat fur here probably wasn't worth a lot. Black House cat fur was worth more money than this guy, but that's okay. He's worth a ton to me. So we're gonna walk through a couple pieces of kit that I think are really interesting. We're not gonna walk through everything on this table today, but we're gonna walk through some of the things that I would choose from that trapper persona. And then we're gonna get deeper into this, but I want to give you guys a little intro to some of this stuff today to kind of give you an idea of how close it represents really what a trapper might carry even today, just with different materials or possibly a little bit different, an unimproved item from what we have today. Stay with me. All right, so without getting too distracted here of everything that's on this table, let's first talk about guns, okay? What I have here is I have a Stevens single shot, break up in 12 gauge, made by Springfield Armory. This one actually has numbers engraved into the stock from an armory at one point in time, okay? This was probably a Depression era or Prohibition era shotgun that was in some police station armory or something like that. And it would absolutely be something that could have been bought at auction or sale and used to hunt during the period. It is a 12 gauge single shot. You know, those are my favorite. And this is a nice old one right here, okay? Sidearm. 38 caliber Smith & Wesson pre-victory model, which means it was made before World War II. I've looked the serial numbers up on this firearm, and the serial numbers say that this thing was made sometime between 1915 and 1940. But the depth of the serial number into the series of serial numbers made during that time frame leads me to believe probably somewhere between 35 and 39-ish is when this was made. This is 38 Smith & Wesson, not 38 Special, okay? 5-inch barrel. It's got lots and lots of marks all over it from where it's been in the world. It says government property right on the top of it, so it was a military firearm. Again, something that could have been gotten post-World War I very easily at auction, okay? Those are the two firearms I've chosen for this, all right? Now, traps, we're gonna go over traps and things like that later on in the series when we start setting some traps on the water's edge. I plan to do an entire series on Depression era trapping. So what I wanna talk about now is kind of the peripheral things that you would carry in your camp or for your camp, okay? And I've got a box sitting aside over here. You see I've got all this stuff sitting here, but I have a box of a couple things sitting aside. And I think it's important to understand, first of all, that scouting started in the teens, all right, the 19s. And there were adults in the 1930s, Depression era, that were scouts. So they may have grabbed some things that they had while they were scouting and use those things, especially if they prove useful to them. Something like a Bridgeport hatchet would have been very useful on a trap line, okay? Very heavy duty, solid steel tang. You're not gonna tear this thing up. It's pretty bulletproof, right? So I chose that as one of my tools. A steel mess kit, not aluminum, okay? This thing's heavy. This is made out of carbon steel. You've got a carbon steel skillet, carbon steel pot, carbon steel cup, and you've got a steel bowl, okay? This is a heavy duty cook set, and I see no reason why someone wouldn't have carried this who used to be a scout or could have found this at a sale, you know, some kind of a bumper sale or something like that, a tailgate event, anything like that during the Depression. Somebody could have picked something like this up very easily, or somebody was getting rid of it, or they could have had it in their family, or it could have been theirs all along. So I don't see any reason why they wouldn't carry this, because I would carry something like this even today. And if you look at the nesting kits that we make today, the carbon steel folding handle skillet I'm getting ready to come out with in November, this is a carbon steel folding handle skillet, okay? So it only makes sense to me. I've got a vacuum thermos here. It's got a cork instead of a lid, all right? This is from the probably 1915 time frame, 1920 time frame. It's aluminum, but it does have a vacuum sealed tube of glass inside of it. This would have been very handy for carrying coffee along the trap line, something that we do even to this day in things like a Stanley thermos, okay? And this one here is a Thermos brand thermos, all right? So that's something probably peripheral that we would have had with us most of the time, okay? As far as knives go, you know, a pocket knife like this Utica, this old Utica pocket knife, and when you look at it, the difference between those old pocket knives and those old folding knives is the can opener, right? They had that really old what they call a crab claw can opener on them, okay? That is an old period pocket knife. So it was a simple affair. It had a small blade, a larger blade, a can opener, and a screwdriver and bottle opener. Pretty simple affair. Now, a fancier tool would be something like this, and this was made by Walden Company in New York. And this one is much older. This one is probably late 1800s, okay? And it is a multi-piece design that gives you a knife. This thing still has great walk and talk. I mean, that thing still snaps like there ain't no tomorrow. It gave you a spoon, and it also gave you a two-tine fork, okay? That two-tine fork tells you a little bit of the age right there, okay? This could have been late Civil War even. This is old enough to be used during that time frame, okay? And it was a two-piece design that just slid together so that you had an eating utensil with you, and you could use this with your Scout mess kit, or you could just carry some type of utensils like this right out of the kitchen, which many times they would do, all right? So that's kind of a quick thing to go with that food kit, all right? And I don't want to get too deep into all of this peripheral gear today because I'm going to go over more of it later. Let's talk real quick about lighting for a minute, because that's something important while you're walking the trap line, is being able to see where you're going, all right? Now, remember that we're in the age of electricity now in the 1930s. So flashlights were a thing, right? So a 3D cell flashlight like this one with a fisheye lens would have been a thing. Would have been about 40 lumens, 30, 40 lumens. Something like this PAL spotlight right here. You can see this thing is small. You could hang it, you could carry it by handles, you could set it down on something, but it worked fairly well. You can see that it still works to this day. Again, probably 40 lumens of light if you're lucky, maybe not even that much. This is a 2D cell model. This flashlight's 3D cells, right? I do have a larger one here, and I believe James Bender showed one of these in his video. This is a Bearcat search lantern. This has 4 D cell batteries, and it does still work as well. But in my opinion, it's not as bright as the smaller lantern is here. And then, of course, I think that any trapper worth his salt probably, especially in that time frame where, you know, these things were still fairly early or fairly new to people, this would have been a great novelty to have. But I think on a trap line, most guys would have preferred to carry some type of a lantern like this Dietz Scout from around 1918. These are pretty rare nowadays to find, but a little Wizard is of the same time frame, a little bigger lantern, also kerosene, but would give you light more guaranteed probably than something like a flashlight where the batteries could run out and you couldn't replace them. You could easily carry extra kerosene. Now you could carry extra batteries, but if the bulb went, you dropped it, something like that, you would have a problem. Whereas these older kerosene lamps are built to be pretty heavy duty and probably were considered more reliable in that time frame than a simple flashlight. But I've chosen to carry both at this point in time, and we'll see how that works. Now, I've got lots of other peripherals here that we'll talk about, but I wanted to just get a quick video out to you guys today to kind of introduce this series. Okay, listen guys, I just wanted to get a quick video out to you today to introduce a couple of items, main items that I would carry, you know, on the trap line, things like that, alongside traps and trap tools. We've talked about all those things in other videos. They don't change much over the last, 70, 80, 100 years. They don't change a lot. So we're going to carry those same type items. We'll talk about that during the Depression era trapping series that we're going to do this year. I'm going to get ready for this period squirrel hunt. I've still got to get some clothing. I've got a little bit of clothing that fits into that time period already, but I've got to get some more. And I've got a wedge tent we're going to set up, and we're going to use for that as well. I've got a cot that's on the way. I had an old wooden cot, but it's been since gone or lost. And so I bought a wooden cot, and it's on its way here. We'll put that in the wedge tent. We'll put some type of camp box in there like this with our peripheral goods in it. And we've got a pack sitting right here that's very, very representative of the period, especially for a trapper, which is a Trapper Nelson Indian pack board. This is a 1920s pack that was made for trapping, basically. It was called the Indian pack board by Trapper Nelson, all right? So we'll talk more about that, get a better look at that in videos as well. I do have a series on making pack frames. I talk heavily about this particular pack because it's an inspiration for a lot of the pack frames that we make even today in our classes. So listen, guys, I appreciate you joining me for all this rigmarole and just kind of getting started in this series and just kind of letting you guys know what's going on. I was kind of going through and sifting through some gear today, and I thought, you know what, might as well turn the camera on and talk about some of this stuff. Again, we're going to talk about all of it before it's over with. I just wanted to get you guys an introduction to the series. I'm also going to film some stuff at this squirrel hunt at the end of October. I'll be at Smoky Mountain Knife Works with a bunch of instructors from the Pathfinder School. The first weekend of October, we'll be there. Second weekend of October, I have a class here. I think it's a basic class or Bushcraft 101. I think it's a basic. Then the third week of October is our squirrel camp that we're going to be doing in historical fashion. So I'll be filming some stuff along the way. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, friends. And I'll be back with more videos as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.